This is So Your Parents Are Old, and I'm Vanessa Grigoriadis. I am here this week with Leeza Gibbons. She's a TV host. She hosted Entertainment Tonight and lots of other shows that you've probably seen over the years. And a while back, she won an incredible show that you probably watched called Celebrity Apprentice. And her idea that she won with, I think will vibe with a ton of you because it was an idea for a nonprofit organization that supports caregivers. It's called Leeza's Care Connection, and we will have a link in the show notes. Please go check it out after you listen to this interview. So, Leeza is a really interesting person. She is a super optimistic person.
Right.
She is also super into boundaries. And I wondered to myself, do boundaries keep you optimistic? So that's part of what we're going to have her answer today.
Mm.
I am personally pretty interested in that answer, and I hope you will all join me in thanking Leeza for being here.
You're so nice. I love that question. I have never thought about that ever.
Well, I just love that you say that optimism is the way to get through life, particularly as somebody who is a caregiver for your mom,
Hmm.
caregiver for your grandma. I think a lot of us are wondering, how do you stay sane through that time? And,
Yeah.
look, there are a lot of, the Mel Robbinses of the life of the world do say boundaries are important, right?
Boundaries are self-love.
That's
Boundaries
right.
are respect, without a doubt. And I think that we're the only ones who can do it because no one else knows what our perception of ourselves is. No one else
Hmm.
understands what we need to do to feel proud. And I think
Yeah.
every time we either cross our own boundary or allow someone else to invade our space, we chink away at that armor of self-respect. And that's what feeds and fuels the optimism. Um,
Yeah.
you're right. I am an optimist. I came just preloaded with it from the get-go.
Mm.
And I've got 3 kids and, one of them is, but the other definitely isn't. And the third one is kind of half and half. So I get that we come with a worldview, but I think that optimism is such a force magnifier and that part of what we have to have as caregivers is resilience. And to me, it is the mental competence that allows
Mhm.
you to continue to build resilience.
So this experience that you went through with your mom and your grandma, which
Hmm.
was, I'm assuming, extremely intense, how did
Hmm.
you keep your optimism? Can you tell us like a couple of anecdotes of how you were able to apply that?
Well, my granny was such a role model for me and such an inspiration. And,
Mm.
one of those big bosom women who, when they laughed, they could just hug you and hold you in and make you
Mhm.
feel you'd be safe forever. And my mom, her daughter, was truly my best friend. So these two women losing themselves to Alzheimer's disease threatened my capacity to lose myself and to wonder, well, who the heck am I? And I know those of
Mm.
us who have been through caring in any capacity, it will work your last sanity sanctuary where you feel like you've got nowhere else to hide. You've tried under every rock and pulled up every cover and, walked in every shadow trying to escape it. And there it is. So, to stay optimistic, which sounds like such a namby-pamby Pollyanna word that's not even real. Like, how the heck do you apply optimism to something that's not going to get better? I
Mhm.
think I think that that's one of the hardest things, Vanessa, about caring for women, because we know 2/3 of us who are caring are women. And especially as women who have achieved and hustled and overcome obstacles, and we begin to see ourselves as the kind of people who can make that happen.
Mm.
So when someone has Alzheimer's disease, when there's dementia, when there's a chronic illness, you suddenly can't make things happen and all your superpowers just evaporate. And I think that is where you have to really come up with that Tigger effect where you just kind of bounce forward. And I stayed optimistic, which to me is code for hopeful,
Mhm.
right? I mean, there is always hope. And hope doesn't mean that you can necessarily affect the outcome or the end game, but it means that you can stay engaged in it, that you can survive it, that you can cope it, you can live through it. I mean, some days, don't you just feel like, I just want to get to tomorrow? I just want to get to tonight.
Right. Yes. Well, the thing is, I think for you as a person who comes out of television, and I'm a person who comes out of magazines and audio, it was very easy for me at the beginning of my journey with my mom to
Hmm.
say, well, I'm a producer. You know, I
Right.
produce all day. I could produce her life too. No problem.
Correct.
And so, what is it? Where would you have such a way with words. How would you describe the wall that you hit against? For me, it's just the emotions are overwhelming. And sometimes I feel like that's what's making me so tired while I'm trying to produce her life, you know?
No kidding, because
Mhm.
you're used to being effective. And a
Right.
lot of things that we do as caregivers just don't work because we
Hmm.
have not learned it, because we haven't lived it. And this is the ultimate on the job training situation. And you think you know intellectually, you think intellectually, I think we approach it, as you would producing anything, right? I'm going to be well resourced and well referenced, and I'm going to get support, and I'm going to have knowledge, 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 and take
Mm.
action, 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 because that's what works. Like you, I really thought when my mom got sick, I thought, well, and I even told her, I said, look, mom, we're going to figure this out.
Hmm.
We're going to get you in a protocol. We're going to get you in a research study. I'm going to travel around. I'm going to meet enough people. We're going to figure it out. The science is moving so fast. Well, guess what? My mom died in 2008. She kept hope till her very last breath, I believe, that
Wow.
she was going to be a part of the solution for someone, if not for herself.
Mm.
And when we look at growing older, and I'm much older than you, but all of us, that's where we're going, right? When we look at becoming the elders in society, I think that we want to believe that we still have something to offer. And people who have dementia, like your mom and my grandmom, it's really imperative that we continue to remember what they have to offer and to focus on what's left instead of what's lost. And it's
Mm.
very easy to get caught in this vortex of, but you're not my mom anymore. And my mom would never say that. My mom would never take off her dress at a black tie gala and be standing there in her bra and panties. That would never happen to my mother.
Right. Hmm.
And when those things begin to occur, I get a lump in my throat every time I flash back to images along the way of saying goodbye to my mom. Um, it's hard to readjust your identity of her, of the person you love, of your wife, of your spouse, your mom, your dad, and because that causes you to look at your own labels that you put on yourself, and you're no longer that fun, empowering daughter who shared life experiences with your best friend who happened to be your mom.
Sure. So, what surprised you the most about this, other
Mm.
than this? We're talking in a very large, abstract way, but was it just that the day to day care is not really supported by the government? Or, like, what were your big surprises as you were going through this?
I think the loneliness, the sense
Hmm.
of isolation, the feeling of being misunderstood, the lack of community, which is why what you're doing is so important. I think we're having a moment now where we have more awareness that there are 100 million of us looking for answers and trying to wrap our arms around each other. My mother instinctively knew all three of her kids. I'm the middle, which kind of makes sense because in the middle, you got to learn how to negotiate and
Hmm.
how to kind of peacemake and all those things. And when my mother got sick, I would complain to her like, "Well, mom, I don't know what to do." And it was the early stages, and I would just be talking out loud. So one conversation would be, "I don't know what to do," and the other is, "Don't worry, we're going to fix it." But my mother was much wiser than that. And she said, "Honey, all you have to do is tell the story. That's what you've done with your life professionally.
Mhm.
So just tell this story." And it was so generous of her. I don't think she was tied to anything as lofty as her legacy or, what her life would stand for. I think she was trying to save my life. And it did because it gave me something to shoot for. I think in our culture, when we make something visible, we make it valuable. As a
Mhm.
writer and producer, you get that instinctively. But look at any of us, whatever we do, however we express ourselves. I think you can't heal it unless you reveal it. So when you say what was the biggest surprise, it for me was I didn't have anywhere to go reveal all of these feelings of loneliness and inadequacy and fear and anger and all the things that were eating away at my daily existence. And my life was not making sense. So really, I created in the world what we wish we'd had. And that became Lisa's Care Connection. And it was really, in a big sense, it was very selfish because it allowed me to put energy in forward motion and stay focused on the things that fuel me and feed me. And it allowed me to begin to have a part in creating, hubs, an oasis in this kind of desert of caring.
So you tell me the story. So your mom passed away and you started the charity then and then went on Celebrity Apprentice, or do I not have that right?
Right. No, that's exactly what happened. We started this work in 2002. So
Okay.
we're not new to this, but we are
Mhm.
true to this, that's for sure. And my mother was still alive, and that really gave me the energy to make it happen. But we weren't talking at that time about caregiving. We were still, as we are today, we were still shaming and stigmatizing aging and certainly Alzheimer's disease.
Mhm.
And there was this misplaced guilt and shame and blame that is still around, although it's getting much better. My dream was to create a place where it would feel like the kind of energy that they have at Alcoholics Anonymous,
Right.
where people can raise their hand and say, "I'm Leeza, I'm a caregiver." And everyone else will say, "Hi, Leeza, we get you." And wherever you are in the world, you can find other people that can be there for you at 2 a.m. because they know how to receive what you're putting out there. We're not there yet, but I think, look, you're a vessel for this. What you've created is an extension of what that is. So that's pretty cool.
Well, I just don't understand why more people aren't connecting to this because we all know what happened with menopause and perimenopause over the last few years. Suddenly, there's so much talk about it in a way.
Yeah.
Can you even imagine 10 years? We'd never say to a man in a polite situation, "Oh, let's talk about menopause for a second." I mean, my God, right? Like it was a
No,
word you didn't utter in front of the male species. I'm still not sure if they really want you to utter it, but
they don't. There's a
now
lot of eye rolling.
there's a lot of eye rolling, but now people are talking about, let's take hormones. Could that really help you? In fact, maybe it is protective against breast cancer instead of, putting you in danger of it. So I believe that we are in for a great realignment in the way that we talk about caregiving for elders in this country. And it may just be financial because the fact is that you have a very large generation. You have the baby boomers, and then you have I'm Generation X, right? A much smaller generation that is now aging into caring
Right,
for
right.
their parents. And either, that's going to be Medicaid and some of the burden is going to fall on the Gen X kids, or it's Medicare. And as we know, long term care is not covered,
Yeah,
right? Under Medicare. And that's going to be whatever nest egg your parents had will be going straight to their care. So even
Yeah.
if you just want to put it in those terms,
Mhm.
even just take it out of the emotional and say, we're this country where people are sports betting to make a fortune right now. Like this is a big financial issue that both male and female kids are going to have to deal with their parents. I just think there's so many different levels we can talk about it on,
That are
and they all
unavoidable.
need to be talked about. Yeah.
Well, when you and basically, we have painted ourselves into an aging corner that we
Right.
all now have to deal with. So,
Because we're living so long. Is
because we're
that what you
living
mean?
darn long. I mean, look,
Yeah.
I'm 68 years old, so I'm a boomer.
Okay, you're
Um,
looking fabulous, I
well,
have to
thank
say.
you for
That
that.
is
I
awesome.
will receive that.
Okay,
Thank
please do,
you.
please do.
But here's the thing that's going on. E- Every day in our country, 10,000 people are turning 65. Every day we're happening.
Wow.
So in a few
Okay.
short years, we will be the biggest bulk of the population, more than the 18s and under. Well, that's never happened. So it affects every aspect of our society. So everyone who is in the workplace, who is dealing with presenteeism and absenteeism because they just can't focus. They've got childcare, they've got elder care, they've got no
Mhm.
support, they've got no understanding, they don't have flexible hours, they're not getting any stipends, they're not getting any tax credits for caring, they're not getting support.
Mhm.
So where we are in our country and globally is we've got to make a choice. Do we say, oh, caring, that's something that's for private families. Caregiving is what the sons and daughters and husbands and wives do because that's your position in the family. That's what you get to do. And
Mhm.
there's truth to that. I do believe it is both a privilege and a burden to care. There are blessings and there's a challenge that goes with it. But the big part of it is it's expensive. It costs a lot of money that people are taking from. So you talk about sandwich generations or the people who are squeezed. They're taking the future and it's being leveraged, right? Because you're having to care for someone who's now living to be, a centenarian. And we never expected that. So you bet we have to look at this legislatively. And honestly, Vanessa, if we don't have a caring economy, an economy that values caring as much as productivity, this whole thing is going to fall down because caregivers, a lot of you that are listening to us right now, that's the invisible scaffolding that is holding up society. It's $600 billion of unpaid care that you're pumping into the system every day. What the heck would we do without that?
Mm. Exactly. Yeah. And I think as we look, kids are cute, kids are adorable, babies are very cute. But we talk sometimes about care, which is also, by the way, very difficult. As we all know, the cost of childcare in this country is now going up and up and up. But we talk sometimes about, a new infant care credit or things like that.
Yep.
But then we don't think about the back half, as the Sphinx, right, would say from, eventually you're gonna be reduced to walking on four, you're gonna have that pusher walker have four legs later on the floor, and it's just or three as the story may go. I don't remember it exactly. It is a back half of caregiving that can be, you know, maybe not as joyful. And I do want to talk to you about where you found some joy here. Maybe not every day as joyful, maybe a lot more complex,
Hmm.
but it is as time consuming, if not more time consuming. And we have to figure out a way as a society, I agree, to support people. Because the idea that you would be working a job and also doing caregiving, unpaid labor, which
Yeah.
so many people are doing. I mean, you've even said it'll take 10 years off your life. What's that about?
There is scientific evidence to indicate that compassion fatigue, caregiver burnout, the stress that you feel, and the assault that your immune system goes through when you're actively caring can often result in you dying before your
Mm.
diagnosed loved one. And that can translate to you living 10 years, fewer years in your lifespan.
Wow.
And what we're looking at here is in our country in general, we know we're messed up with healthcare. Where do we rank in the world, like 50th or something when it comes to lifespan? And we're even lower than that when it comes to health span. So we've got a lot of people living longer in illness.
Mm.
And that's just unacceptable. And part of it is what you just said. Everyone that's not focusing on this issue now is denying their future self because there's no getting out of it. You don't go backwards. You only live this life moving forward. And that's where we're all headed. So when we aren't looking at it, that's just cruel to ourselves. And it's weird that in our youth obsessed culture, um, we're not. I do have to stay focused because I am fiercely optimistic. I do think we're getting better. There's evidence that we're getting better. And I mean, there are communities of people on every social platform that are talking about this. And when you mentioned talking about menopause and how we've normalized discussions, um, we're finally looking at what are the things we should be doing that are brain protective as well? What are the things that we should be offering ourselves to make sure that we're not burning out? That's part of why I do the work that I do, because we know that better care for caregivers translates to better outcomes for care receivers. We know that unless you do that cliched thing of filling up your cup first and taking your oxygen first, that
Mm.
you do not survive this. So the best way to care for your loved one is to first practice self-care, because this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And like we used to think we could stay up all night and study all night and cram for the test and hustle for the interview and all the things that we're so used to doing, you can't do that with caring. It's just impossible.
So what did you do? How did you do it for yourself? I mean, what were your rituals? Whether it was crying in the car when you left or what, someday what was it for you?
I did it badly in the beginning. I had a lot of epic fail, and I still stumble through self-care, um, because I grew up in a culture where we wanted a gold star for being self-sufficient. And we're fueled by praise and recognition, whether that's money or attaboys or whatever it is, that's what fuels us. When you're caring for someone who has dementia, they cannot give you the recognition. They can't say, oh, that makes me so much better. I feel more understood now. It's great when you did that. I like that thing to eat. They can't tell you those things. So every day you feel like, bam, I got it wrong. Bam, I missed it again.
Mm.
And there's a lot of self-flagellation that goes on, I believe. So for me, learning to be present is, I think, our life's purpose in many respects. Chasing
It's
happiness, just
true.
chasing this moment. Um,
Yeah.
my mother's disease taught me to sit in silence. And
Mhm.
for someone who talks for a living, that's a hard lesson. All those years of doing talk shows, it's like keep it moving, dead air not happening unless it's that big, poignant, pregnant pause. But with my mom, I learned just rubbing lotion on her hands or brushing her hair and not saying a word was really good. And I learned to downshift. And I'm just grateful for the lessons because they've helped me in my post-caring world. And look, every day in our communities at Leeza's Care Connection, I get to be in relationship with families that are in the middle of it right now, that are on the front lines, the first responders to caring. They are overwhelmed. They are frightened. They feel like nobody really gets it, but they keep going. And I believe that if we continue to build this community and provide each other a sanctuary, that we find the resilience that we need to move forward. That's what we need to do as a country too. If we don't support caregivers, we are just turning our back on the whole economic structure that we built.
Yeah. So tell me, for you, when you started, how did you then move forward, and how did
Mm.
you end up on this TV show? What were the steps that led to you being on that?
I was having such a hard time facing my new reality. I was mad at the world, and
Mm,
I was like so in overdrive of just angst. And I was working hosting Extra at the time, and I would walk out the stage door, throw my mic off, and just start pacing. And sometimes I would walk for hours. I would scream. Um,
mm.
and back then, remember, this was a long time ago, I had a little micro cassette recorder, and I would record my feelings like an audio diary. I still have all those little mini cassettes that I've never played
Amazing.
back. I also journaled, but it was really important for me to just release it. And I didn't have, and honestly, unless people are in it with you, they don't know how to talk to you about it. They don't know what to say. They don't really want to hear it. Um, and, and I hadn't yet taught people how to support me. That's a big thing that I think as caregivers, we have to figure out. And part of the work we do at Lisa's Care Connection is, you know, help family members recognize that the worst thing you can say to a caregiver is, let me know how I can help. Well, come on. This caregiver is drowning and trying to figure out what the heck to do. The last thing they need is to make a list for you to help them. So
So
I
what
think,
is helpful in your experience? I mean, bringing food over is something people talk about a lot, but what is helpful, if you, because we all know not everybody uh wants to be around people with dementia. They just don't. So they're
no,
going to disappear. So
they do
what are
disappear.
little things they can do, that will not take them out of their own comfort zone?
And by the way, those people that disappear, release them with love, put them in their own little elevator because they're not going where you're going, and maybe they can't. So we have to
And
stop.
you've said, or no, 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 you posted this because somebody else said it who you liked. Forgiveness is important, not necessarily for the person you're forgiving, but for you to
For
forgive them
you,
and release that feeling. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
right? And
Yeah.
sometimes that's your brother, your sister, your family member, someone that you think, why aren't they showing up the way I'm showing up? Well, we all have different limitations and different fears and different ways to cope or ways that we can't cope. And often it's a daughter or the oldest daughter, but you know, when you asked me, I think, how did I get through it? What did you ask me, Vanessa?
I asked you, what are the little things that people can
Oh
do
yeah,
to,
great.
yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
Mm,
I think that when you know someone is caring and you see that they are struggling, they may not even know what to do, what to ask you to do. So if they have a dog, say, you know, how about I come over and let's take a walk with the dog, or let me walk the dog while you take a bath. Um, I'm making meatloaf. I'm going to make an extra one. I'm going to bring it over to you tomorrow night. Not just asking, do you like that or do you want that? Just do it. Um, hey, I'm out running errands. Can I pick up your dry cleaning? And sometimes that's a safe way for that person to talk to you, to say, you know, A lot of times when you ask the caregiver how you're doing, they'll start talking about their loved one. Well, he had a bad day. They can't
Mhm,
even internalize, the feeling that they have a separate and apart identity from the one for whom they're caring because the life becomes so enmeshed. And I really believe that you have to hang on to yourself even while you are letting go of someone you love. And that's imperative because at the end of this road, it's you. And where are you going to be mentally and emotionally? And we know the stats on caring. We know it is a mental health conundrum. I think it is a national crisis. It's not tomorrow's problem, it is today's emergency. And
mhm.
we need to look at our own lives like that. Like you can't just continue to rack up points on the board. After a while, you have to stop achieving and start receiving. And maybe that is, there's buckets that we focus on at Lisa's Care Connection.
Mhm.
There's energy and there's empowerment and there's education and all of those are important. But you've gotta move your body, you've gotta have socialization, you've gotta have nutrition, you've gotta have sleep, and it sounds so, "Yeah, yeah, whatever." But those are the bullets in your arsenal that are gonna help you fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hate to bring it back to the financial, but I do want to ask you one thing that I've heard from people is when you're particularly going through something like dementia, the caregiver also starts to think, who is going to take care of me? Whether
Right.
that's a spouse or a child, right? If it's a child, you know that there may or may not be a genetic connection, but when you start looking at a mom and then a grandmother, which is the case in my
Mhm.
family as well, you start to wonder. And then you start to think, well, I have to sock away, right? A bunch of money. So I think that part of what makes caring so hard is not only are you trying to be present, not irritated, take care of yourself, but you also now feel an immense pressure to protect your own later stage in life. How do you do that? How do you balance all of that?
I got hyper vigilant, probably to the point where my kids are like, "We got it, mom." I didn't want them to be blindsided. I wanted them to feel unencumbered by anything that may happen to me. I also didn't want them to accept the inevitability that something was going to happen to me. So I promised them that I would spend every day doing everything that I could to make sure that my mother's reality and my grandmother's reality did not become my reality, but that I would play whatever hand I was dealt. And that what I wanted for them was to be conversant about it, to be engaged in their own mental health and their own brain health. I know that all the things that I share with them and send them little posts and forward things to them, I know they just kind of delete, but they get the message that they can, to a certain extent, be the architects of their own future. But the piece you're talking about, Vanessa, is real. When I was, gosh, in my 40s, I got a long-term care policy. No,
Hmm.
I'm in great health today. I was in amazing health at that time. I hope I never have to use that policy. Today, I couldn't get it. They're not writing them anymore like that. But I did the thing that you said. I started preparing. I don't want my kids to sacrifice their future because they're paying for me to live in illness for an extended period of time. And it brings us to bigger discussions too. My mother and I left nothing left unsaid. I mean, I feel like her journey to the end was a circle that feels as complete as I think it could have been, especially as unsettling as it is to say goodbye to someone with dementia. But when she was in the early stages, she knew where she was headed. Your mom likely knew where she was headed because you're grandmom, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when that is your reality, my mother said to me, I don't want to go through it. I don't want to face it. Um, and I never I I just said, "Well, Mom, we're going to face it together." And she would say, "I don't want you to visit me. When I don't know
Ugh,
your name anymore, I don't want you to visit me because I won't know that you're there and live your life." And I said, "But Mom, I'll know I'm there. And what if I need you? What if I need to be there? You don't want to deny me something that I need." And of course, what mother would say no? Um, but I have thought a lot about her. How was she suffering? What was she feeling those years where she was silent? She had an infection with her tooth, and we didn't even know she was in pain. She had UTIs. We didn't even know. You struggle with, what kind of life is this?
absolutely. And then where does that go from there?
Where do
I
you go
mean,
from
I
there?
I don't know. I've had a lot of discussions with people whose parents are going through this where they've said, "I told my kids I want to go. I
Right.
told my kids I want to go," and I said, "But at what point? Like when in the early stages, you're gonna say, now's the time when I can't walk to the bathroom by myself. That's the
Yeah.
time. Are you gonna identify it's really a moving target? You're not gonna really be able to say as it's going on that
No.
this is what I want, and it's pretty hard to identify that and really mean it, right?
Well,
Earlier on.
you're right, but one of the 100%, 100%, and it does change, and you don't know how actively the loved one is participating in those decisions, so it's really hard to execute them without that primary source. But part of what we help families do and what I did, I got very intentional about my wishes. Not just healthcare directives and power of attorney and all those things, which of course I did too, but looking at, if this happens to me, here's what love means to me. In the final stages of my life, this will feel comforting to me. And I did this 5 wishes, which you may know about.
Wow.
And that was, and look,
Wait,
if
tell me the wishes so everybody can hear.
so there's an organization that has a service called 5 Wishes, and it is a document that anybody can fill out. And if it's not free, it's like $5 or something. And it's to share with your loved ones about, the kind of music I like. I don't want fluorescent lights. I don't like lavender. Don't rub my hands with that. Those sorts of things. Like I want a lot of visitors. I don't want a lot of visitors. While
Mm.
you are healthy and well. And would that change? Does that change with a mind that is going through dementia? I mean, of course it does, but I think it's a great comfort for family members to have marching orders, because one of the best gifts my mother ever gave us as a family, we knew what she wanted. And when she was in the early stages of her disease, she's the one that got us out of our denial. I thought she was drinking too much. I thought she was depressed. I knew something was wrong, but I thought it was just a menopause thing. Or I thought it was, her life has just gotten smaller, and, all of that.
Mm.
My mother said, "I paid this bill 3 times. Something's wrong." She was the bookkeeper. She ran our family like a Fortune 500 company, and it was falling apart and in disarray. And so she lined us all up, my dad, my brother, my sister, and me, and said, "Look, if I kick and scream and don't call you by name, that's when you know it's time to let me go. I don't want to live with you. I don't want to live." She
Mm.
went down the line. "I don't want to live with your sister, da, 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 da. And I want you to tell daddy when it's time to let me go." And she pulled out these brochures of assisted livings with memory care units and said, "This is the kind of
Wow.
place where I want to go." So families fall apart with the promise. I promised mom we'd keep her at home. And they beat themselves up because maybe they can't keep that promise because mom is violent, or mom is wandering, or mom is combative and she's not safe. And I think we struggle with that. The love is in sometimes the little white lies and the therapeutic fibs, and also in abandoning promises that are no longer in the best interest of the one that you love. My mother took that off the table.
Right, but it's so hard,
Oh, it's
right?
impossible.
Because you're looking for something that you can cling to. You're
Right,
looking for something where you say, "This makes me a guilt-free daughter,"
right.
you know? So,
And
because
that
really
is
yeah, the
that's
battle is against the guilt, right?
yeah,
The
yeah, it
battle
is.
is against not only the disease, but also your own self guilt and being able to say, I've done the best I could, and I need to be able to look myself in the eye every day and feel like I'm doing the
Mhm.
right thing. But there's so much chaos and so many decisions to be made that, as
Yeah,
you say, I mean, look, if you have a parent who has laid that out, you are, I wouldn't say 90% of the way there, but you're half of the way
yeah,
because you're taking a lot of the decision making off the table. And that's what will keep you up at night, right? Particularly going to a home. That's the biggest one,
and it
right?
tears families apart, like family members fight with each other, and the struggle becomes about our own voices and our own acceptance and our own place in the family, and we go back to those little kids in our birth order or
Mm,
whatever wounds we have, we revert to that, and gosh, my wise mother really kept us together, and my siblings and my dad and I were each able to offer what we offered in our own lanes of ability and expertise and psychological proclivity to contribute to eradicating guilt, which you can't do. You can't do. Guilt is the constant companion of every caregiver. It just
mhm.
is. I used to have a mantra that kept me sane, at least temporarily. Um, that was, I love my mom. I'm doing the best I can. I love my mom. I'm doing the best I can. And it was so simple, but those were the only two things that mattered. And I needed to be reminded that I really was, because the voices on the outside, people are well meaning, but it comes off as criticism a lot. And part of what we have to face as a society is, what do caregivers need from us? People are drowning. And employers know this because they see it. They see the mental health crisis. They see the sleep deprived worker. They see mistakes happening. They see all of it. And yet, we're not getting in the workplace what we need. We're not getting the flexibility. I mean, if we could have on-site daycare and elder care, think of how much more present workers could be if we had flexible hours, if we did have tax credits, if we did have stipends, if we did have just a more inclusive, accepting environment. Caregivers will give you the world, because they know how to do that. But they first have got to take care of, the chaos in their own lives. And it's every day chaotic.
Right. I mean, I think paid family leave is a great thing. In New York State, you can take now up to 12 weeks. It's not paid at your regular salary, but it's, something,
Yeah, it's
right? So
something.
you don't get behind on your bills. I do question, though, how many employers are going to say on the second year of you taking 12 weeks, how are they going to feel about that, right? So there is some question of if those are realities of the workplace, which we know is just getting faster
Yeah.
and faster and more competitive with AI. I really see it as something where, we need some governmental support around this. And again, if you just want to look at it financially, it is way more
Hmm.
of a burden on the government to have people entering Medicaid facilities and staying there for many, many, many years than it would be to help with a few tax credits for family caregivers who are
And
doing this
right.
work anyway, right?
And keeping those people in the workplace. Um,
Exactly.
it's, I think that we all need to look at voting as though our
Mhm.
lives depend on it, because they do. Right now,
Mhm.
your loved one's life depends on it, and yours will depend on it. And look, I think we all have issues with Congress. Um, but that is the pathway to creating some of the change. And through grassroots advocacy, um, we all have to raise our hands and raise our voices more effectively. And I think we're getting there too. And also, I think if you took a survey of all of our policymakers, our lawmakers, they're facing this too. And we just have to fuel the caring economy in all ways of what that means. And in my opinion, it does not mean cutting social support and mental health support for family members who are trying to live a productive, purposeful life of value.
Exactly. So what to wrap this up, when you were on Celebrity Apprentice. One thing that was said with you that you led with such quiet elegance and grace, and nobody had a bad thing to say about you. And you
Well,
truly are a national treasure. And I think you are one of the best spokespeople we have
that's
for
very
this
kind of you,
issue.
Vanessa.
But this is all so true. I'm curious, when you were trying to get other media outlets interested. You are a creature of TV and media. And you said, look, I'd really like you to do something on caregiving. What kinds of reactions would you get? Would you get, yeah, well, maybe third of the month because we've got to cover the real news, which is people dying and blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like if it bleeds,
Yeah.
it leads kind of stuff. Or what did you hear?
This topic doesn't trend. It's not sexy.
Yes, right. It's
It's
not memifying.
no, no, no. It's it's sacred,
Moving my mom into a home. So
right?
funny. Great filters on. She looks hot. Yeah, it doesn't work.
Although
Right.
we do have influencers, carefluencers who are making it happen,
That's
that
true.
are doing
That's true.
life
Little
with
by little.
Gran, and so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it is happening because it's so universal. Back in the day, I would often get, yeah, well, maybe for Family Caregiver Day. When is that? And it's like one day a year
Right.
we'll talk about this.
Yeah.
Because
April 13th, but
yeah,
every other day we think you're doing well, right? Everything's okay.
we'll give
Yeah.
you a minute 30 on National Caregiver Day. That's really kind of where we were. And we have a long battle ahead of us with this, but it is inevitable. And, I think in 2034, we will be the dominant us seniors. I think we're,
Hmm.
what is it? You're a senior, then you're an elder. So seniors should have the voting power, the purchasing power, the voice to make these changes in our own best interest. And we sure as hell better get to it, because if not now, when? With Celebrity Apprentice, I'm conflict avoidant. I have a PhD, and it's just what I know. But I'm not a pushover, and I'm not anybody's patsy, and I have great passion, and this is personal for me. So even doing Celebrity Apprentice was, at first for me, hard no. That's a hard pass. I'm not doing that. And my husband said they called and they want you to be part of the team, and I went, very funny. I'm not, I'm not going to scream and cry and slam doors and sabotage people, and that's just not what I'm able to do. And he said, okay, well, I'll let them know, and I'll let the kids know that you say you want to do everything you can to change the story for families like yours. You want to do everything you can to support caregivers, but you're not doing this. I'll let them know. And it was like, ugh. And I thought, okay, here's a chance to maybe put it front and center. And it gave me a burning desire. It gave me a true north for the show. And honestly, it changed my reality, because it gave me money to create a center in my hometown where my mom and dad lived and loved and died, and allowed me to do the work that feels now so much a part of my purpose. So that was super cool. But there was not a lot of love for caregiving, what the heck is it? People still don't really know what it is.
And did you get awarded a grant through that show to start, or how does that work?
You compete every week with tasks, and there's money that is awarded if you are successful with winning each task. And it goes right down to a finale. And in the finale, it was me against my friend Geraldo Rivera.
Love,
And it was
yes.
really black hat, white hat, a real example of stay in your lane and be who you are, which we both were. And we're friends and we respect each other. We played the game really differently. Um, and it just turned out that in this case, nice girls finished first. And then, yes, so you are awarded money that you earn through these competitions. And I got about $350,000 to open the center
Amazing.
in my hometown. So it changed a course of direction in my life, and it was more evidence to me that our loved ones pass into what's next, but they are still guiding us. They're still strengthening us. They're still available to us. And I, um, I got to experience that with my dad. He just died less than a year ago. And
Oh.
so I got to be engaged in this work with my father, which was pretty cool because I saw my dad become this caregiver of strength and quiet confidence. And my dad was the biggest personality in the world. And
Mm.
he was able to pivot in his senior years. And then as an elder, he was able to change and grow and become something else that was needed, that gave him a new identity that he cherished. And then when my mother died a few years later, he got a great girlfriend and they had a third act love affair. And
Mm.
I got to be the beneficiary of those messages that you stay in it and we take chapters of our lives with us to the next stage. We get so hung up on the labels of who we were, the title we had, the job we had, the money we made, the people we were married to, whatever it is. And it's very hard to release those things and go into the darkness of, but what's next? And my dad gave me a blueprint for how to do that.
And so at Lisa's Care Connection, how does it work on the ground there?
We are boots on the ground. We are
Mhm.
psychosocial support that is free for the husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends who are
Mm.
caring for someone they love with any chronic illness or disease. Our programs, which are super cool and exciting,
Mhm.
it's everything from line dancing and laughter yoga to Ask the Doctor series to lunch and learns. There's a lot of support groups by affinity group. So if you're
Mm.
a young caregiver, if you're a spouse, if you're the oldest daughter, you can find your tribe. We do drum circles and all kinds
Oh,
of
yeah.
really wonderful things to nourish you, mind, body, soul, and spirit, because the disease depletes you. And
Mm.
we have a program that I really love. I mentioned to you earlier that one of my inspirations was, why can't we have caregivers that are like AA members who are really there for each other and know what to do? Well, in AA, there's a sponsor and there's a person who is being sponsored and who is getting the benefit of that mentor, that sponsor. I create a program called HUGS, which stands for Helping You Grow Strong. And we team up newbies who have just kind of wandered into this desert of caring with people who have stood where you stand now, who've walked that path and who know what to do. And you can kind of go online, find a Hugs ambassador, a mentor that
Mm.
you think will get you, hook up by text, phone call, email, or in person. And maybe it's one time when you just need help, kind of to get through the day. Maybe you become fast friends and that person becomes your sanity sanctuary. So we're trying to find distribution to spread that program so that it can exist in communities and it can exist anywhere, which is what it was designed to do. So if there's
Yeah,
any, isn't that
I mean,
cool?
it's so cool. I looked online. I saw there were a couple different women there. It's almost like, online dating. You see a little
Yes.
profile of somebody and they say, "Hey, this is who I am. I like dogs. I'm a middle-aged lady like you. My mom went through this. Give me a call. Just let me know. These are the times that are good for me. Let me know what's good for you." And then, of course, the physical place in South Carolina where you grew up, which I believe, this is one of the things that's really, really needed is not just a couple of programs at the library that once, every 3 months, there's like, oh, there's a nice, program talking about Alzheimer's, on Long Island and what we can learn from each other.
Right.
Libraries have really become this place where they're a hub for, young parents with their young children, but they should also be at the end of life. They should also be someplace where we can have real programming,
Yep.
if not a physical other building that is more because senior centers have sort of disappeared, right? There's just a lot of assisted
Yeah.
living and things have changed in that way. There's not a lot of adult daycare, where he says, oh, just put her in program during the day. Well, where are those programs and
Where's
of what
that?
quality? Right. So that is something that I think, yeah. So when you say let's vote for it, I mean, are there people, David Hogg has recently said this is part of what he's interested in. We know Democrats tend to be more interested in social services, but are there people you think that we should look out for as part of this community who are really saying we need to care for our seniors and we need to care for the caregivers?
I think if you look at your representatives and you look when you are asked to vote, and the midterms are, going to be interesting for all of us. I think you need to, and we should all call our representatives and ask, what is your position? How are you
Mm,
addressing our aging population? How are you addressing the needs of caregivers? We take surveys of our community, and the number one thing they want is, do our lawmakers even know that we are out here? One of
yeah.
the things that we are working on now is this thing called Caregiver Academy. And we try to click into our desire to succeed and to get a gold star and to know that, okay, I'm trained. I now know how to do that.
Mm,
So part of Caregiver Academy and part of what we do at Leeza's Care Connection is help you find the questions to ask of your legislators or to ask of the people at assisted living. How do you know if it's a good assisted living? How do you know if it's a good in-home care companion? How do you ask those questions? How do you vet them? How do you know what are the signs that it's going okay for your
mm,
mom or dad? How do you manage that? All of it is under the purview of how do we help you on your caregiving journey? And we can do that in person at our center in South Carolina. We also have a center in Burbank, California. So
mm.
it's where I grew up, where my kids grew up. We've got both coasts. We have a new center in Texas that's
Wonderful.
so
Yeah.
that's
Mm,
cool. But the reality is we can help wherever you are because our job is to help connect you to resources and to help you find places in your community that can fill the needs that you have. And when you're dealing with the grief and the overwhelm of caring, you can be the smartest, richest, most accomplished person on earth. And there's some block that happens that you can't get access to that stuff. So you need somebody
mm.
to swoop in and say, great, let's do this.
Mm, yeah. So thank you so much for coming on. So your parents are old. I just want everybody to remember something that Leeza said, which is you have to hang on to yourself while you're letting go of the person you love. We know it is unfortunately going one way, usually when you're doing this level of caregiving, but you have to take care of yourself because that's what the person you're caregiving for really would want, even if they're expressing all sorts of other emotions right now. That's what they really would want. So thank you so much. Please check out the work she's doing. She is one of the biggest leaders in this field and really thinking in a totally progressive and inventive way about how we can support everyone. So thank you so much for coming on.
What a pleasure. I geek out on this. And thank you for allowing me to, Vanessa. And thank you for creating this space. We really need it.
Absolutely. Thanks again. All right. We did it. Yay!